Hi, Walter Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So I've got another classic album inspection for you today, and it's Dio's Lock Up the Wolves from 1990. This came out May the 15th. Today, 35 years ago. So I must confess I didn't hear this album at the time. I was interested to, particularly because he'd recruited a new young hotshot 19-year-old guitarist called Rowan Robertson. For whatever reason, it passed me by. I didn't really have the money to buy new album CDs at that time. I didn't know anyone who had it. So it wasn't until the last 10 years that I first really started to get into this album a bit. So recently I sort of dug it out and I was listening to it and I was like, actually, yeah, I think I'm going to do a review of this because I think, although Dio fans who've had it at the time have always recommended it, I suspect people like me have overlooked it. And I think it's a decent album. So let's sort of break into it. The big difference here is the born a co-producer, Tony Platt, who done Crocus and engineered AC/DC. I've got to say, it doesn't make a massive difference to the sound, really. Ronnie Dio always did a pretty solid job with the production. But it's got quite a nice drum sound, and this is quite open. Sometimes the guitars can be a little tame, and it doesn't have as much of that kind of band together in the room vibe that those early Dio albums have. But I think the young band he's got in this, Simon Wright on drums, Ron Robertson guitar, Jens Johansson on keyboards. He doesn't get a lot to do. He's a great player. And Teddy, I've forgotten his second name. On bass, if you look at the videos, the bass player's actually left-handed, and they actually look pretty good. And Ronnie's quite interesting because they're kind of doing a kind of stripped-down, glammy metal look, sort of jeans, t-shirts, bit of hairspray, kind of like the Skid Row look, but not quite as glammy. Sort of trying to navigate that late 80s phase, so to speak. But it's quite strange because Ronnie does look quite a bit older than the rest of the band by now, whereas he didn't in the past. But opens with the Wild One, which is up tempo track, sort of more of a glammy sort of metal type riff for this. Really good vocal by Ronnie, an exciting opener, sounds good. Guitar solo's got a cool tapping bit, but it doesn't quite sort of gel for me. But I think the first thing you notice is that the band sounds like it's gelling, and Ronnie's in fine form. I mean, he just sounds as good on this as he ever has. In this period, I mean, he's hitting his late 40s. Then you got Born of the Sun. It's a bit slow, this track, but I really like it. It's got an epic Dio feel. It's got a really nice vibe to it, nice little lead break, and it's got a really cool end section with a kind of unison vocal line, which is something different that Dio hadn't done before. So an excellent track. Then you got Hey Angel. This is another kind of ploddy track. This was a single. It's a good track. I don't think it's great. Again, the Hey Angel title's got a bit more of that glam metal title to it. Got quite a nice riff at the start where the guitar's on its own. I think there's a bit of bottom end been cranked onto the guitar to give you some oomph in it. It does sound good. Track 4 is Between Two Hearts. So this is the first sort of not typical Dio track. It's kind of got a slow bluesy riff. I suppose if you were to compare it, that riff is similar to the intro to Shame on the Night. But it's good. Again, it is another slow track, but having that more bluesy vibe is something that Dio probably hasn't explored since his days with Elf. 6 minutes 30. We'll come to the song lengths in a bit. Next up's Night Music. So this is your sort of typical Dio commercial rocker. I've got to say the verses are a little flat on this, but they're made up for by a great chorus and a really good lead break. From Rowan Robinson, probably his best solo on the album. Very melodic. The mix is a bit flat on this. It's lacking a bit of power, but it's got quite interesting chicken-picked intro, sort of thing George Lynch or Halen would do. Again, just giving it a slightly different vibe. Very catchy. Then you've got Lock Up the Wolves. This is the epic. It's 8 minutes and 33. I think this is the longest track that the Dio band had done up to this point. Again, it's slow, but it's epic. It's got that kind of big sort of Sign of the Southern Cross mood about it, with a real staccato riff. I do like the lead break on this. Ron Robinson uses a lot of space and makes some sort of gnarly sounds and quite feedback sounds. He shows a lot of maturity on this. He achieves a lot by doing less. I'm not sure I could have done that when I was 19, but I do really like this. Then next up is Evil on Queen Street. So this again is a 12/8 blues, a proper bluesy sort of shuffle. It's got a cool solo. I like the lyrics. I think Queen Street was supposed to be some kind of diner, or was a diner on there that Ronnie James Dio used to go to. But it's a good track. Ours is the next track, Walk on Water. So this is the other up tempo number. I think the album really needs this by now. There's nothing particularly sort of unique about this. It's got a typical sort of generic riff, but it's good. It just benefits from having that energy. It's the only track under 4 minutes. It's got a really good solo on it. He really lets rip on this solo, Ron Robinson. So that's the kind of first 8 tracks where the sort of strongest material is. I feel after this, the tracks are good. They're kind of more fillery. You've got Twisted, which again has sort of got a glammy sort of rock riff. Quite an interesting Lydian bit on the solo. I quite like this. I don't think I dislike it. And the same with Why They're Watching Me, probably a bit of a better track, and he's got a cool 12/8 time change with the solo. And again, Ron Robinson acquits himself well on that. And then it finishes with My Eyes, where Dio kind of references previous lyrics. It's a bit more epic. Yeah, I quite like it again. Don't love it. But I've got to look at my notes here. Was Ronnie Dio, when he got the younger band in, was he maybe trying, maybe Wendy suggested as well, to kind of try and recreate that younger vibe that he had with the original Dio band, sorry. And I think to a certain extent you can feel that the new band have injected something into proceedings in the same way which Craig Goldie did on Dream Evil, after like Sacred Heart being flat. I've got to say, listen to this album, it has risen up my sort of fave Dio albums. I think Rowan Robinson does a good job. It's a shame we didn't get to hear more of him. And Simon Wright, of course, has proven himself to be a very effective drummer. I think his work with Dio's better than it was with DC. Like I say, I think the bass player's fine. And Jens Johansson is a bit underused, but Dio keyboard players always are. They're just there for texture. So, like a lot of albums at this time, by this point, Dio's stock had gone down and he didn't do anything to raise it back up to sort of Sacred Heart levels. It was kind of Dream Evil or below. So naturally went back to Sabbath, and by the time next time he did an album, the lineup had changed again, although Jimmy Bain and Vinny Appice had come back. I think this album, it's 60 minutes long, and like a lot of albums from this period, there's clearly that pressure probably from the record companies to fill more space because CDs allow for more space. So obviously every Dio album, the 4 before this were typically about 40 minutes, 42 minutes, fitting on the 2 sides of vinyl. With this, in the CD era, the tracks are longer. And there's some, quite long tracks, 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 minute, 5 minute tracks. You maybe could have lost a track or two, which would have given you a classic 9-track Dio album, and that would make the overall picture a bit better. But I still feel like listening to it, I think it's certainly a 7 out of 10, maybe 7.5. I've enjoyed it. I don't know if what I thought about it at the time. I probably reckon I'm enjoying it more now because you can see it more in the context of an overall career. But if you've not heard Lock Up the Wolves, check it out. And thanks for watching this. Remember, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.